Hello YouTube, I picked this up at a car boot sale a while back. It cost me about £2. It's just a big plastic egg. You can take the top off, I'll show you that in a second, and its arms kind of rotate around. But it's very basic, and my idea with this was to turn it into like a sort of a grumpy Humpty-Dumpty, like a Grumpty. That was the plan, but you'll see as this video evolves that I changed my mind and I end up just making him into a sort of a big goblin type thing. I think when I first bought this at the car boot sale, I planned to keep it and display it with other advertising characters, things like the Michelin Man and Bertie Bassett and the Home Pride guy, that sort of thing. But I decided against it because he's too modern and I just like the old vintage characters. I think even on eBay now you can pick these up for like £4 or £5. So if you did want to buy yourself one and use it as a sort of a base for a character, you could get one quite cheaply. Right, so I just took his hat and goggles off and I've taken him obviously into these two sections. I'll mould over the top of his head with some milliput and I'll explain that later. I just used this Tamiya craft saw just to cut his legs off, and I'll reposition his legs so that they are in more like a sitting position. Right, I decided to stick the top half of the egg to the bottom half using super glue. Don't buy super glue in little tubes, buy it in bottles like this, it goes much further. So I stuck that together, that's made a permanent bond there. Now because this was going to be Humpty Dumpty, this foam block was going to be his wall. And I've got like a soldering iron, which is like this Dremel gas powered one, and it's got an angled blade on the front here. And what you can do is once that's heated up, you just run it along, and where it touches the foam, it makes these really kind of deep grooves. So you can very easily make the effect of a wall. Next, I decided to start coating all of the egg with milliput. If you haven't used milliput before, it looks like this. It's a two-part putty. You mix the two parts together in equal amounts and it sets rock hard at room temperature in about 4 hours. So I'm literally just squashing some onto the surface just to make this very thin layer. Doesn't have to be very thick at all because milliput is so strong. It just is like a sort of an outer casing really, and I've coated the legs with it as well, and you can see it's already looking pretty solid. The wall, hopefully you can make out all of those deep grooves in between. Like I said, I don't end up using this wall, so I'll probably use it for something else because I decided not to make him into Humpty Dumpty after all. The reason I was going to do Humpty Dumpty is because he always used to creep me out quite a lot when I was a kid, and I thought it would be quite cool to make like a really grumpy looking one. But anyway, he, like I say, turns into a goblin instead. These resin teeth are ones I think that dentists use. You can buy them quite cheaply on eBay. They come on like wax strips, and you can see you just basically roll a couple of thin sausages of milliput and then push the teeth up into them. Gives you that really kind of realistic looking teeth effect. Okay, with the lips, I've just again rolled sausages of milliput for the main shape, and then I've just pressed into those using modelling tools just to get all of the grooves. The eyes are plastic doll's eyes, which I just got from a doll's head that I got at car boots out. Again, I only paid like a quid or something for the doll's head, so it's worth looking out for those. You can search for them in charity shops as well. Then I've made the nose, just a case of kind of pushing up in where the nostrils are and then adding all of the kind of grooves and things into the eyelids and those sort of bags under his eyes. I've modelled the eyebrows. I end up remodeling the eyebrows so they look even kind of deeper. And you can see in here, I've added these wires in for his fingers. That's just a case of drilling a little hole for each finger or thumb and then pushing the 2mm aluminium wire into the hole and fixing it in with a bit of super glue. You can see that I've left these so that the arms can be moved up and down. They still rotate around, and I think that's pretty cool. it would be quite nice to display him either with his hands down or his hands right up. It was at this point that I decided that he wasn't going to be Humpty Dumpty, he was going to be a goblin instead. So I took him off of the wall and I just started modelling things like deeper eyebrows, horns on his head, and I've put some ears on, and then all of this textured stuff, which is just a case of kind of putting Milliput in patches and then just pressing into it with a modeling tool to get that real nice deep texture. That will look particularly good painted. With the tongue, I've just gone in and I've added all these little bumps using a little modeling tool, and I've made like a little hole in the middle of each bump, and I'll paint that all up, and that should look quite like a realistic tongue effect. With the ears, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if he had a second set of ears behind those ones? And then I thought, what if he had a third set of ears behind those as well? And so this is what I ended up with, and I think this looks pretty good. And I can imagine it all painted up as well, looking even better. I started adding quite big warts to him as well, just sort of in random places. And then I've also decided to kind of add more detail into the hands. So what I've done is I've modelled like some veins on the tops of his hands. You can see them there. Look. Those will all soften in when I paint them as well. And then I've done the kind of wrinkly bits on each knuckle. And I think those work well too. For the toes, I kept them pretty simple. I literally just, again, rolled a kind of long sausage of milliput for the whole row of toes, and then I just pressed down into it with a modeling tool to create the grooves for the line between each toe. And that seems to have worked quite well. It gives that sort of flat look to the bottom of his foot, which I quite like. I thought I would zoom out a little bit and show you him viewed from the side. Here you can see that I've added tails as well. I started with one tail in the middle, and then I worried slightly that he might tip backwards either to the left or to the right. So I thought I would add an extra couple of tails, so he's got three now, and they just make him really, really stable. It means he's not going to tip over at all, but also they look really cool. So at this point, he is ready for painting, and I was getting a little bit excited because I love the painting stage. It brings everything together and it makes him sort of come to life. You can see where I've smoothed in the milliput on the back of his ears, and it's made them a really nice shape. It was around this time that I started getting sort of Boglin vibes from this. And I'm not sure whether it's just because I've looked at a lot of Boglins on eBay and that sort of thing. And I do really like the shapes of a lot of them. And I've got some mini Boglins, but I haven't got any full size ones yet in my toy collection. But I'm sure I'll get some at some point. And yeah, he's really kind of reminded me of those. I love the fact that you can change the position of his arms. That was a nice touch, and I think I might try doing that with more of my characters in the future. Okay, so as I quite often do, I painted the whole of him black to start with. This is just using System 3 acrylic paint, and I used it pretty much straight from the tub, maybe just with a tiny bit of water added to allow some of the paint to get down into those kind of deep cracks and things. You can see obviously I've left the teeth and I've left the eyes, but everything else is painted solid black. Right, you can't really see any difference at this point, but believe it or not, I've gone over it with some dark green. It's just emerald green, and it shows up a little bit on camera, but not very much. It showed up more in real life. Again, it was really just another sort of base coat, really, and then this brighter green gets dry brushed over the top. This was a mix of the emerald green with a little bit of leaf green and a tiny bit of yellow ochre as well. Still System 3 acrylics. If you haven't done dry brushing before, you basically get some paint on your brush and then you rub it on a bit of kitchen paper until there's hardly any paint left at all, and then you're just dusting it over all the top surfaces of everything. You can see all the deepest areas remain black, but all of the high points go this nice bright green colour. Okay, I went on to paint the teeth and the gums and the tongue, that sort of thing, using either yellow ochre mixed with white or cadmium red mixed with white for the pink of the tongue. And then you can see I've painted the whole thing with a coating of PVA glue. This is how it looks while it's still wet, but the PVA glue then dries and it's not white anymore, it dries clear and it ends up looking like this. So this is the finished Goblin, or pretty much anyway. If you look really, really carefully in some of the deepest areas, like in his ear, for example, there, you can still see a couple of bits of glue that haven't fully dried yet, and they're still looking white. But pretty much everywhere is looking really clear. And this also provides a protective layer to the paint. So there's two reasons why I coat my creatures with this PVA glue. Firstly, it is to give it a slight shine. So if you're making something like a goblin, you want him to look a little bit slimy. If you paint him with the PVA glue, it has a slight wet look to him afterwards. That's the first reason. The second reason is to protect the paint that you've just put on. So the acrylic paint is really cool, it's really bright and vivid, nice colours and things. But if you were to scrape your model against a wall or something like that, the paint might come off. So the PVA glue just protects it and stops that from happening. By the way, I don't just use normal PVA glue, like I don't use kids PVA glue. I use wood flooring PVA glue. It's the stuff that they use for sticking down oak floors and that kind of thing. It's really, really tough stuff. Like I use it as well sometimes for paper mache kind of effects. So if I'm making a model and I need to create like a layer that's really tough over the top, I use kitchen paper and PVA glue, this wood flooring PVA, and it provides a really, really kind of tough layer. It's really hard to tear a layer of kitchen paper that's got this PVA glue on it. This is really reminding me of a massive, great big boglin. So if any of you happen to be watching this video and you're a boglin expert, if you collect boglins, let me know in the comments which boglin this one looks most like, because I can never remember any of their names or which one is which. Right, I always hope that by doing these videos and putting them on YouTube that it might inspire some of you to go out and make creatures of your own. That is one of the main aims of this channel. So if any of you do get inspired, again, could you let me know in the comments, because I would love to hear that. I would obviously like to thank Milliput for sponsoring this channel. If you guys haven't tried Milliput before, go out and get yourself a pack and give it a go. It really is such a cool modelling material. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe to see anything that I post up in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.